3, 2, 1.
Hello, and hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, a good time wherever you are. This is Shady Aljacky, and you are watching now Supply Chain on Air live show. If you are watching this show for the first time, today is my first episode in season number 2. In the first season, we had 10 episodes with 10 different amazing guests. The show is caring about all supply chain fields. That's why I'm hosting supply chain experts in the all areas of supply chain management. Unfortunately, I stopped this show for about 3 months due to some personal issues, but thanks God, I'm here again with season number 2. So, if you are interested in supply chain fields, if you are trying to understand more about this field, so don't miss this show and the coming ones. As usual, before I introduce my amazing guest, please tell me from where you are watching us and what time is it now in your country in the comments. I'll give you some time to write in the comment until that. After that, I will introduce my amazing guest of today. Till the moment, I'm waiting some comments. Unfortunately, I have something wrong with this StreamYard or this stream link. Okay. Here is with our first audience, my friend Atif. Welcome back, Shady. Thank you, Atif. Thank you so much for your usual cooperation and usual support. Nihal Talat Hel Shady from Egypt. Thank you, Nihal. Okay. Okay. Today, I'm so glad to have someone who has an amazing experience in the supply chain field. He is a progressive thought leader within 25 years of experience in end-to-end supply chain management, including 20 years within global Fortune 100 and 500 consumer goods manufacturers. He is international known speaker and subject matter expert on integrated business planning, sales and operation planning, sales inventory operation planning, and supply chain improvement methods within today's technology driven environment. He is Mr. Steve.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the introductory and the opportunity to talk with you and your followers.
Thank you, Steve. I'm sorry for that. The technical issue happened today in that link. We maybe start late, 10 minutes. Sorry for that. As usual, I'm asking my guests before going through the topic. In a couple of minutes, could you tell us who is Steve?
Absolutely. Going on beyond what you've already gone through, I've been in all kind of industries. So I started off my field in retail. I was a replenishment buyer for a 1,000 store chain, a toy buyer. I moved from that into what we call here in the States convenience stores. I was a buyer there and then went into manufacturing. So I worked for the world's largest manufacturer of consumable dental products and spent about 10 years there working my way up through the process up to the corporate world headquarters, traveled international for about 6 years, and then after that moved into respiratory and oxygen medical devices. From there went to a Fortune 100 company, Honeywell International, very well known. And then from there I went to consumable products with Knoll Brands, very large manufacturer of top products like Yankee Candle, Wilson baseball gloves, and a lot of top known brands. And then from there went to Ashley Furniture, world's largest manufacturer of furniture, and now I'm with the Beckway Group, specializing in S&OP, SIOP best practices, working with private equity firms in interim roles and best practices of rolling out S&OP, IBP, and SNOE. A lot of acronyms there, alphabet soup.
Amazing journey, Steve. It's a very long journey and very interesting to be discussed with you this issue. Let me give a hand to the audience. Today, Mr. Steve give us a nice gift. By the end of the show, I will ask everyone if he interested in that gift to send me a message through LinkedIn, and I'll send him this gift from Steve. Okay, Steve. Sure, you know nowadays it changes whatever their sizes. It has a direct or indirect impact on the supply chain management, and the planning sector is the most impacted sector by such changes. So our topic of today will be sales and operation execution versus sales and operation planning. Most of us know the meaning of sales and operation planning, but maybe some of us don't be familiar with sales and operation execution. So could you please give us a brief about this term?
Absolutely. So a lot of people, as you mentioned, SNOP or SIOP or IBP, whichever acronym you want to use, it's not that important, but that should typically be your mid-range planning. When I say that, 3 to 18 months out. And what you want to do is be looking at constraints, capacity constraints, supply constraints, demand, consensus, things like that. When you talk about SNOE, the execution piece, there you're looking at that, what I would typically refer to as that frozen horizon, when you're inside your lead times. And you got to make a business decision. Are you going to do air shipment? Are you going to do expedite freight and things like that to cover customer demand? You also might be looking at production. Are you going to run the overtime and those kind of cost elements, and looking at that short term? How do you manage the supply and demand disruptions that are happening? There's a huge focus on this now since the pandemic and the war and the things that we've seen over the last 2 years, that this has become a big focus for many people. And unfortunately, a lot of individuals are grouping it in with their SNOP process because of, that's where the teams get together. But unfortunately, that monthly cycle is just not the right place for it, because you can't go through that much time, a month-to-month cycle before a meeting. And then also you can't go to that level of granularity or detail in it.
Exactly. So you could say that the sales and operation execution, short term, like weekly, on a weekly basis, as I understood from you. So that led me to ask you another question. What is the major difference between sales and operation execution and sales and operation planning? Otherwise, the term short term or long term, as you said.
Well, the big thing is that term horizon, but your audience and your individuals participating will be different. So, a lot of people, they'll say, hey, let's just have the same people as the SNOP. You don't want to have your top executives. You don't want to have sometimes your mid-level. It's going to be the boots on the ground, the individuals that are making that day-to-day tactical execution. So it's going to be a different group. Now, there does need to be a hierarchy in that, or a decision-making tree, where if it's certain things that they can make their decision independently, because you don't want to have it too structured. But if it hits a certain threshold for cost or for inventory impact over the space and things, there should be hey, I got to escalate this up if it meets these kind of thresholds, for whether it's that, freight, whether it's for the labor overtime or elements like that. You have to have a decision-making mechanism that it goes smoothly.
Exactly. Can we check our lovely friends again? We hear Nihal Talat. Hello, Mr. Steven. Nice to see you. Thank you. Atif is telling you interested journey, very amazing journey. So again, Steve, regarding to what you had just mentioned, I could add that the sales and operation execution came in the middle of the planning levels. Am I right?
Well, I would say it's more, when you're looking at it, it's at the granular end of it. So you have kind of, when you look at the big buckets, a lot
Okay.
of times I'll talk about you have the strap, which is your highest level. That's 1 to 5 years out, 10 years out, depending on the company. When I was with Honeywell International and it changeovers, new product introductory, that could be 5 to 10 years out. If you're in a high turnover new product introductory, such as technology, where they're introducing new phones and things like that every 3 to 6 months, when you're fast fashion, that's going to be a lot more condensed. But
Okay.
you have that, which is that kind of strategic, and then you have typically your AOP plan, which is annual. And then
Annual.
from that, you also have your SNOP that kind of bridges over those two. And then SNOE is the most granular, and it kind of feeds through those. So the top strap, then into SNOP, AOP, and then SNOE being the most granular, lowest level.
Yes, and this level of planning, the first level that sends the feedback from the operation on the ground for production or purchasing, as I understood, or MRB, for example. So it has the impact from the fluctuation from the market, then get this feedback to the S&OP, then the strategic, as I understood. So it has good feedback. We can say this level decision maker, right?
Yeah, it's I would be careful of decision maker versus it is a closed loop. It is a circular. You want to kind of at the end of the day, your strategic is always your top level, and everyone wants to be marching towards that. That feeds into the SNOP, and things will be changing, but that's changing on a monthly occurrence. And then you go down to SNOE, that's
Okay.
changing weekly, that or daily, depending on the industry and the type of product. So that's a very fast changing, but it has to feed back into the other ones. So from that perspective, you are correct. But it's kind of that hierarchy of what goes down back with a feedback loop, and does things need to change at the SNO P level, because that's where you have your consensus demand, you have your supply constraints, and when things are moving mid-month, it has to feed back into that. So when you get into that monthly cycle, it's the same data sets and tools, but it's more granular, and you can make decisions quicker to be more responsive.
Exactly. Amazing, amazing discussion, Steve. So, from the slides I had read from you just sent me before, I was confused a little bit about the integrated business planning elements. So, can you explain to me what are the IPP elements and how to make this a smooth S and OE integration with IPP elements?
Sure. A lot of times, and again, where we got to be careful is not to get too bound up in the acronyms or the names. And when I say that, IBP, obviously stands for Integrated Business Planning.
Mhm.
You can use IBP or SNOP or PSYOP interchangeably, and they can all have these same elements. And where I usually refer to it as I have a maturity matrix. And I have that in the deck that we're going to share later, but it's where you are in those stages. Early stages, a lot of companies are looking at just quantities. So, hey, what is my past due quantities? What's my forecast quantities? And things like that. And what you want to eventually start doing is pulling in the financial elements, the strategic elements. And that's where it's bridging across into the multiple functional areas, and where you get more engagement of senior leadership, your COO, your CEO, your CFO, because these are key tools that's going to drive decisions, and where they're going to want to be involved with this, and it should be supporting data to help that. So that's where the SNOE, where there is financial things. Back to, if you're going to do air freight, does it make financial sense? And you got to have those elements, that it should not just be how do I meet the customer requirements, but what are the financial reasons of when you do and when you do not do that expediting for whatever strategic reason. And it's not always profitability. It could be, is it a key customer? Is it a strategic customer? So there's a lot of elements within that it's not always black and white, and it's different from company to company.
Amazing, Steve. I have another question, if you please. I know you are very busy today, but I will take more minutes from
Sure,
you.
absolutely.
Related to, thank you so much. Related to S and OE, what is the job title in the organization who is responsible for this level of planning?
It can be different. And when I say that, a lot of organizations are so unique. And I found that either through my career of doing this for 30 years or my current role where I work with Alliant clients that I go in and out over a couple months and then move on to the next one. So I have that opportunity to see different organizations and the way they're structured. A lot of times SNOE, like I said, it's more the boots on the ground. So it could be a supply chain director or someone at a plant level that's close enough to the details. It could be an operations individual. Depending
Yes.
on the site, if it's all of a sudden, maybe it's not a production site and it's a warehouse. So you could have a warehouse manager or something like that. So we don't want to narrow it down and say, hey, it's this specific title, but it is someone that's going to have influence on the process, but close enough to the details to work with the cross-functional teams and to allow to bring people in and out as needed through that process to make sure it's driving results in a quick turn kind of method.
Exactly. I could add, I have experience in heavy industries. Most of my experience in heavy industries, cement and steel plants. So this level of planning was under my responsibility as a supply chain director, exactly as
Okay.
you mentioned. But I just ask you because I don't know about the FMCG pharmaceuticals, such as these manufacturers. I think they are having the same, almost the same.
Yeah, it is similar. It's just what I find is when I have had international roles in different industries, it can be unique depending on from company to company. So what we don't want to do as the audience is listening and people are participating, they might say, hey, I don't even have that title or something like that. But it has to be someone that is close to the details, can work with the individuals and it's usually done at a single site level, because that SNOE is all about that execution. And a lot of times you don't want to have someone at a regional or global headquarters doing SNOE. They might be listening in, they might be participating, but they shouldn't be the lead person kind of driving it. And that's where the SNOP can be very different from a audience leadership and people involved with it, because you want to make sure it's moving quickly and that there isn't that you have the right scope of individuals involved to drive that.
Thank you so much, Steve. Last question, please, if you please.
Sure,
Uh,
let's go.
if there is someone has only 2 years of experience in supply chain, what
Yes.
could you advise him to reach to that level?
When you say that, when you're saying level, are you talking about a position or the SNOE process? I'm not sure the question.
Sorry, it's my mistake. SNOE.
Okay, so someone that's new and they're interested in introducing the process that is not in place. Is that where we're going?
Sorry again.
Again, I'm trying to. So you're saying with SNOE and someone's been in place for 2 years and they want to launch it? Is that what you're
Yes,
asking? Kind of approach?
yes,
Okay.
exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So for me, I always like linking it back to what's the either strategic objectives that's going to get the results, or where's the biggest pain points in today's environment. Obviously, with the supply chain disruptions, they're typically one or two: the demand or the supply. Where are we managing the incoming supply to cover a spike in demand, or are we slowing down the supply because all of a sudden there was a free fall in the demand? And it's balancing those two. And I think what you got to look at is, what are the key drivers and what levers can you pull? There's certain things that you can do for certain industries and other ones that you can't. If all of a sudden you got, you're buying international and you got long lead times where it's 2-3 months because of the production lead time, the in transit, the shortage of containers, that's going to be much different than if you have local suppliers and you got days or a couple week lead time. So this is where, again, it's very hard to be overly specific. But what we want to do is, what's the driving elements and where is your company versus other ones? Are you seeing because of economy slowdowns or because of changes in market channels? There's so much going online now versus the brick and mortar. We've seen a dramatic change in demand shifts.
Yes.
And it has impacted so many people. So I think you got to look at where's those pain points, where's the sweet spot, and put in measurements and technology that allows you to see that visibility. Where I've also seen pain points for some clients is they can't answer the questions. You say, hey, I have this big backlog and it's growing, but I'm not sure how to address it because I don't know where the problem is because they don't have the tool, maybe they're on Excel spreadsheets and it's a very manual process and it takes them hours to update it. And it's trying to build in new tools, business processes and capabilities to have that visibility that it's efficient to do it weekly. Because, some people say, hey, I'm just going to take my SNOP process and move it to weekly. Well, when it takes some individuals, days to update their data sets for SNOP, you just can't do it. There's not enough hours in the day for the individuals to do it. So it's trying to balance those things. Does that help answer the question?
Yes, yes, very interesting answer. I would just add a small point. Nowadays, we are facing with the suppliers. They have the stock, and they couldn't give us a price. They couldn't give us an offer because they don't know the coming raw materials changes how much will be. Therefore, they have a stock, but they couldn't provide an offer, so they keep stock with them, and we cannot purchase these items from them, and the whole process is stopped. This is what we are facing nowadays, especially in Middle East. Most of the raw materials we are importing from Europe and China, and sometimes from Indian, and all these countries almost stop supplying these raw materials until they know what will be happening in especially between Russia and Ukraine nowadays. You understand this very well.
Sure.
So this is one of the obstacles that we are facing nowadays, and it's affect the planning levels, all levels of planning. Let's back to our audience. Yeah, thank you. We'll say thank you, Niall. Steve, I'm glad to join me in this show. It was very fast. I apologize again for the technical issues happened before we start this show. I'd like to thank you for your time, and also thank you for the gift you sent to me, and I'll send to the audience. Anyone interested in this gift, just send me a message. I will send you this gift by Mr. Steve. Thank you, Steve, very much. Hopefully, you come join me one more episode again in this season or coming season, inshallah.
No, I appreciate it, and I really enjoyed it. And I welcome to join you again.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much.
Yes. Have a good evening.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.